consistent with that of your wife that she had not dealt with in her affidavit to say, state and ask you about it. I didn't pay any attention to any sounds coming from the house or the direction. How is that? How is that your wife was cross-examined? It's not in your statement. It is not in her statement. She was then cross-examined about the screaming at the time of the telephone call. And she said that she was focusing on something else, meaning she didn't pay attention. You then, out of your own accord, without the state asking you, go there and say, without anyone asking you, I didn't pay attention to that. How's that?
It's quite simple. It's notes that I made to myself after the advice of Advocate Nikki Maritz. And I've obviously reviewed those notes to remind myself that's a note that I made, that I did not pay attention or wasn't aware of any sounds that came from the direction of where the incident happened, because I was focusing on the telephone call.
Can we see the notes?
I don't have a printed copy available.
Can you tell someone where it is and go and fetch it whilst you're in court, that we can look at the notes?
I have no problem with that. I have a copy on my iPad, which is in the witness room back.
Well, so we can print it, and those notes were made before your statement?
That is correct, yes.
And you agree that you give that note to Captain van Aert?
I did not. I informed him about it, my lady, and he said I must keep it in a safe place.
And your first statement that you made to the two policemen that came, keep a copy of that?
I did not receive a copy of that, my lady. It was I would term it as just a casual conversation relating.
Did you not make a written statement?
Not that first evening, my lady.
Not the first evening, sorry, you just referred to that statement in your evidence.
Yeah, so there were two visits. The one evening was by the two investigating officers, my lady. And then in the following week, Captain Mike van Aert contacted me, made an appointment, and that's when I made my first official statement.
Your iPad will, of course, show when you put the notes on your iPad. Did you put it on at that time, or was it more recent?
My lady, I have a copy. The notes were made on my personal laptop computer, and I've kept it there, a copy. Last night I converted the notes to a PDF format and transferred it to my iPad.
So we will be able to see when the first note was made.
My lady, I think it would be possible to derive that from the file history.
But we will get it during the adjournment. We'll get the notes, and surely you're satisfied to show it to us.
Absolutely.
And what caused you to make that note?
It was, my lady, it was on the advice of Advocate Nikki Maritz. He said that normally these cases take a very long time before they are heard before a court, and your memory will fade. So he advised us to make notes in as much detail as we can remember, to rely on to refresh your memory later on.
But it's a bit different, because this is not a note of what you observed. It's a note of what you did not observe. It's a negative. That's why I'm asking.
My lady, the content of the note describes the entire experience. What I did, I make explicit mention of the fact that I did not pay attention to the sounds from the direction of where the lady's screams were coming. It's one sentence and probably a 1.5-page document.
We'll look at the notes. That's not too important.
Well.
Now let's go to the next point. In your statement, and I want you to read it out, paragraph 6. Just before the shots. I can help you. It says, ek het die vrou gehoor gil. You see that?
I do.
Now, in your wife's statement, she says the same thing in paragraph 6. Ek het die vrou gehoor gil, meaning I heard the woman screaming or yelling.
I accept that.
Yes. However, In your evidence, you then describe the screaming. You defined that. You said that it was more intense. You could hear the fear. You remember that? Would that be correct?
Are you referring to my testimony yesterday?
Yes.
Yes, my lady, I remember that.
Is that in your note?
I can't recall.
Yes. Now, what is significant? In your wife's evidence, not in a statement, she also defines or describes just the one word, gil, or the yell, or the scream, to say that it was more intense and she could hear the fear, exactly the same. And it is remarkable that it is not in her statement, not in your statement. She testified about it to describe it, and you come and you testify about it in the same manner. Can you explain that?
It's, I would venture a guess that it's the way you verbally tell the story.
Yes.
There's a lot more emotion involved when you convey the experience,
Yes.
where the statement is more factual.
Well, let's go on. Let's go to screams. If you look at paragraph 6, I read to you, first die Afrikaans. Ek het die vrou gehoor gil en toe 'n sarsie skote gehoor. To translate, I heard a woman screaming and then I heard a volley of shots. Are you satisfied with my translation?
I'm satisfied.
Is that what you meant to tell the person that took the statement from you?
That is correct, yes.
Yes. In your wife's statement, it starts the same. She heard the woman screaming and then 4 shots. You just had a volley of shots. She had 4. I heard the woman screaming and then the shots. So that's in her statement, that's in your statement. However, in her evidence, she said, and she used now explicit words, that she heard the screaming also during the shots. You have that?
Yes, I do.
You come to court yesterday and you testified now with explicit language that you don't have to infer from it that you heard the shots, the screams, also heard screams during the shots. Do you agree?
I agree. That is
Yes.
exactly what I heard.
Let's go to the first one. Next one. Let's go to your statement, paragraph 6. You say, and I first read the Afrikaans that you can find it. Die laaste gil was net na die laaste skoot. 1 tot 2 secondes, meaning the last scream was just after the last shot, plus minus 1 to 2 seconds. Do you have that?
I do.
Your wife's evidence, not evidence, statement. The woman gave the last scream about 2 seconds after the shots. You see that? But when your wife came to give evidence, she said the following. She said that the last scream, when she said, I heard her voice fading away with the last scream. Significantly, when you gave evidence yesterday, as it was not stated in your statement and your wife's statement, but in her evidence, you said the following. The last scream, it faded moments after the shot. The fading. She spoke about the fading of the scream after the last shot, and you speak about the fading. How is that?
When we had to testify, my lady, or not testify, make the statement, I used the indication of seconds to indicate a very short duration. I chose different words. If I have to describe it verbally, that's how I would explain it. I think the 1 or 2 seconds perhaps came in response to a question from Captain van Aert, how long? I'm fairly certain that I would have given him a similar version, verbal explanation of moments after the last shot, the last scream faded away.
Mr. John?
And then I think he asked me how long were the moments, and to try and peg a time frame on it, I probably said 1 or 2 seconds, or it could be half a second.
Mr. Johnson, it's not about the time. It's about the exact same word. Not in your statements, only in her evidence. Fading. And then in your evidence. Fading. That's what it's all about. Now, it may be a remarkable coincidence, but I'm dealing with 6 of them now in a row. You understand? I've taken the first one, the time, where it then became exactly her time. And so I went through it. I don't want to repeat it. I'm now with the one fading. Will you, do you want to give an explanation again about the coincidence of using the same word that she used on a cross-examination that was not part of your statement?
Lady, I'm satisfied with my explanation.
Would it be part of your notes?
Milady, can Advocate Roop just clarify what you are referring to?
You know your notes that you have on your laptop?
I mean, what in the notes?
The fading.
We would have to go and
Yes,
look at the
we'll
notes,
see,
my lady.
Of course. Well, let's go on, Mr. Johnson. Let's go to paragraph 6 still of your statement. In your statement, paragraph 6, when you describe the shots, you refer to it, and I first give you the Afrikaans. You say, en toe 'n sarsie skote, then a volley of shots. We all know in Afrikaans and in English a volley exactly what it is. Now, your wife gave evidence to say after the first shot there was a small pause. Couldn't give the time, but it was a small pause. When you gave evidence yesterday, what did you say about the duration between the shots instead of a volley of shots? What did you say? Can you remember?
I recall, my lady, that I testified that there was a pause between the first shot and the shots that followed.
A small pause between the first shot and the other shots. Exactly the same as your wife's evidence. Not in her statement, not in your statement. You agree?
I agree.
How is that? Is that a coincidence?
My lady, I don't think it's such a big coincidence if 2 people stand 10 meters apart from each other, witnessing the same incident, that they would have such similar recollections of the event.
It is not that, Mr. Johnson. It is where it differs from your statement. It is not the same. It's not contained in your statement, and it was in her evidence, and then it is in your evidence, and then I start to understand, or maybe not understand, why you did not give evidence directly after your wife's evidence. You were available. What was in it? Why did you just not come and give evidence after her evidence?
My lady, is Mr. Roo referring to yesterday?
Yes.
I did give...
No,
I don't know.
Mrs. van der Merwe was called in between, so as
Oh,
to have that opening period.
my lady, I'm sure she wouldn't mind me volunteering this information. She was extremely nervous and kept on saying to us she cannot take another day of this. She wants to carry on with her life. And I think for that reason, Advocate Nell obliged and gave her the opportunity to testify yesterday.
When did she tell you that? After her evidence?
Milady, no, that was during our period that we waited there. She said she was going to request that she could testify.
During what period?
Milady, it's during the period that we waited in the witness room, the past day or two.
The two of you waiting in the witness room. When was that?
All the witnesses are congregated together in a room on the first floor.
In the same room?
That is correct.
You and your wife as well?
Before she testified, we were there together, and during the breaks I saw her once or twice.
So you saw your wife during the breaks, and after her evidence, because there was nothing stopping you to come give evidence, you saw her again, Mr. Johnson?
Milady, I don't think it's so strange. We lived together. We were going to be together.
I'm not asking if it's strange. I just want to put a factual position before the court. You saw her again after her evidence and before you gave evidence. You came into the box.
That is correct, Milady.
Yes. But yet you would say all these remarkable points of similarity between your evidence not to be found in your statement and her statement, that we could ascribe to coincidence.
Milady, I don't think it's coincidence. When my wife testified, she's been an aerobic instructor for close to 20 years, part-time hobby. So she counts rhythms and numbers. She plays piano up to a quite advanced level. So instinctively she counts it. I don't pay attention to that detail. That's why I couldn't say there were exactly 4 shots. I estimated 5 or 6, I think.
Mr. Johnson, maybe I must stop you. You don't know what you're doing to yourself. Because that was solely in her evidence, what you've just said, and not in a statement. What you have just told the court is to confirm what I'm putting to you over and over. And here you come and you tender it. You did not discuss the matter, you said before the time. I asked you all the questions. And now she told you about counting, because of her musical background, the shots. That was in her evidence, not in her statement.
It's something we discussed, and we said we wonder why she would remember the exact number. And that's what our conclusion was.
So was that after her evidence before you came in?
No, milady. It was way back, I think even before we made our statements. There was quite a long period after the event until we made our first statements.
You see, Mr. Johnson, you told the court, I asked you right in the beginning, but for emotional support, after your statements you did not discuss it. That aspect is not in her statement. It came out when she was confronted on hearing the 4 shots and why she could say it's 4 shots. It was not something old. It came out in cross-examination. Or an examination chief, I can't remember. But in her evidence, not in her statement. You saw her after her evidence. And now you come without me asking you. You tendered an additional coincidence. That's what I'm putting to you. You discussed her evidence, and I will argue to the court. It is just too remarkable that that you did not come and give evidence after your wife. First call someone else. Let you and your wife be together. Make sure that you patch and that the evidence is consistent, like fading, like pause between the shots, now like the music counting. You understand? You understand what I put to you, Mr. Johnson? You shake your head. Do you understand?
I understand what the advocate is saying, but I can honestly tell you we did not discuss her evidence. I mean her testimony.
Yes.
I can give you my honest word.
You know, in my experience, I don't want to say it's applicable to you, but once witnesses start to introduce the word honestly, then I wonder about it, because right from the beginning it should have been honestly. You don't have to say it. What worries me, Mr. Johnson, let me explain something to you. This court is really entitled to something, and that is that witnesses come to court not contaminated, uncontaminated. Give that independent version so that the court can listen to this witness and to the other one, because witnesses are not always reliable. Sometimes they're not lying, but there are many times a reliability issue. And the only way to satisfy yourself then about reliability is to maintain a strong independence in versions. You have not favored the court with that, Mr. Johnson, you and your wife. I'm sorry, I put it to you. You could just as well stood together in the witness box. That's what I put to you. What do you say to that?
I don't
Aren't
agree
you
with
going
your
a
statement.
bit too far, Mr. Rowe?
Maybe I won't, it's for the court to decide, my lady, I won't take it to that. I withdraw that. Now, Mr. Johnson, the screaming that you say in your evidence that you heard when you're back on the balcony, you said it was screaming and then a shots. How long was that screaming?
Milady, it's a long time ago. I can't recall in exact detail.
So you have a difficulty, and that's fair, I understand it, Mr. Johnson. You have a difficulty when you think, and maybe you experience that as traumatic. You have a difficulty to remember accurately when you're back on the balcony, you heard screaming, but how long, if it was short or long. You can't remember.
All I can offer you is that I heard screaming.
You don't know if it was long before the shots or short before the shots. You only remember screaming. Is that correct?
It's difficult to judge the amount of time that lapsed. So, and my short might be your long.
Yes.
So I don't want to peg a time on it. There were screams and then the shot started.
Your wife spoke, but maybe if you don't know, then you don't know. Spoke about moments. But you can't remember.
It's not that I can't put a time duration on it. It didn't feel like long. But the whole experience didn't feel like very long.
And we know that you're standing outside on the balcony when you hear what you describe as shots. And so when I refer to shots, please understand me, Mr. Johnson, that I'm not submitting to you that they were indeed shots. I'll come back to that. But just for ease of reference, I refer to them for present purposes as shots. So let me repeat again, just to put that to you. You were standing outside on the balcony, and your wife was inside the house when you heard the shots.
That is correct, my lady.
But you were not able to hear the number of the shots, the number.
My lady, I did not count the shots. I heard a number of shots, but I did not count them. I estimated 5 or 6 shots.
Was it difficult to count them at the time? Is it, or just because that you, as you sit here, that it's a long time ago and it's difficult to remember?
It was even afterwards, my lady, shortly afterwards in my first versions of the events, I also did not know how many shots were fired. I only learned that afterwards.
You also, sorry, the last part, I couldn't hear you.
I said that only afterwards I'd learned that from probably in the media or perhaps Captain Mike van Aert. It was confirmed by some other person or source.
maybe I understand now better one of the things that you said in your evidence yesterday when you spoke about people, that you assumed that there were many people much closer to Mr. Pistorius' house. Then you added that would have a much clearer recollection and would have heard more clearly what had happened.
That is
your evidence
correct.
yesterday?
That
It
is
tells
correct,
me
my lady.
something that you acknowledged that there was some problem. It was not that clear and your recollection was not that good. Because that's why you defer to or hoping to defer to people that would have heard clearer. Would that be unfair?
My lady, I do not agree with that statement.
What did you mean to say by saying with a much clearer recollection and that would have heard more clearly? People closer that would have heard more clearly.
What I meant that is that the assumption is the closer you are, the more detail you can hear.
Excuse me, I couldn't hear that. I'm so sorry that I do that to you. I have difficulty in hearing.
What I said, my lady, is that my assumption was if you were closer, if there were people closer to the house, they would be able to hear more clearly and perhaps more detail.
Who was first to wake up that morning because of what you say, the screaming?
My lady, I woke up first.
So you woke up first, and it's, if I look at your evidence, your wife, you heard the scream that you thought you woke up by the screaming. You then listened, you heard the scream again, and then you jumped up. Is that not so?
My lady, can I just ask the advocate to repeat that statement, please?
Thank you, I will. You woke up, of course it's difficult, you were sleeping, thinking that it was a scream. You then listened, you heard a scream again, and then you jumped out of bed.
That is correct, my lady.
And it is only then, if I look at your evidence, when you jumped out of bed, that your wife woke up.
Yes, that is what she told me.
Yes. And now you're up. What is the position that you hear the scream then again when you're on the balcony?
Yes, my lady, I ran out to the balcony, and the next screams that I observed was when I was outside on the balcony.
Yes. So let's deal with this. You woke up. There's uncertainty what woke you up, because you said you listen now carefully to make sure. Then you heard the scream.
Yes, the second screams was a confirmation that I heard correctly the first scream.
Yes, the first one there was uncertainty. I'm not saying they didn't hear, but there was uncertainty. Go straight to that point. So the first scream is uncertainty, but the second scream you could hear it now, and that caused you to jump up.
That is correct, my lady.
Yes. Then let's call it the third scream. Let's give the first one also a title as the first scream. The third scream you heard when you were on the balcony.
That is correct.
And how many screams were there? That was then the woman screaming, help, and you heard a man just after that screaming, help, help, help.
No, my lady, when I got to the balcony, there were just screams, and I stood there for a short time. It's difficult for me to give you an indication how long it was. And then listening to hear if I can hear any detail. And then the lady person screamed help, and it was followed by a man shouting help, help.
Yeah. Just to, if I may rewind, Mr. Johnson, you said, and correctly so, that was your evidence, and you also said today that your wife told you that, she confirmed to you, that after the first scream, you jumped out of bed. That caused your wife to wake up. You're jumping out of bed. You then ran to the balcony. Correct this far?
That is correct.
Then on the balcony, you again then heard the scream or screaming.
That is correct, my lady.
So what we do know from this is that when your wife woke up, you would have been on the balcony, and that would be the first time that she would hear the screaming when you're on the balcony? According to your version.
It's possible.
Yes, according to your version. But then we know one thing. On your version, your wife was not awakened by screaming. She woke up. She woke up because of you jumping out of the bed. And that was at the time after a scream and you going to the balcony. That must be correct.
Can I just confirm? You're saying my wife woke up?
We've confirmed that because of you jumping out of the bed and then running to the balcony. At that time, there was no screaming. It was a scream before you jumped up, and the next scream was when you were in the balcony. We've went through this.
I would accept that, yes.
So what I'm saying to you on your version, your wife did not wake up because of screaming. On your version.
In fact,
on your version, that's all I said.
I would think so, yes. I think when I asked her when she woke up, and she said when I jumped out of bed.
Yes. We've gone through this. Only saying on your versions, it's not difficult. Then, although you regarded this areas, neighborhoods, estates, as extremely safe, there was a first association that entered your mind when you heard the screaming. And that was, there's a house robbery, a house break-in or a house robbery, a dangerous situation.
That is correct, my lady.
It was never in your mind, house robberies do not happen in these areas, cannot be, it must be domestic violence. Correct?
That is correct.
That is unfortunately, and I cannot emphasize it more, that is unfortunately a way of thinking, not so.
That's correct, yes. I agree.
We exposed to house robberies and the violence associated with that. You shake your head?
Yes.
You're not, I mean?
Yes,
that's so.
True.
In fact, that thought that you harbored that it was a house robbery was still part of your thinking after the shooting. Mr. Johnson,
that is correct, my lady, yes.
if I may remind you, it's not for me to do it, and I understand it's a human thing to do not, but unfortunately it must be recorded. So if you maybe would focus on that just to, instead of nodding, say yes when it's a yes.
I will do. My apologies.
You also believe, and this was also in discussions with your wife, that what would have happened at that house was an assumption, of course, was that they shot the husband. They killed the husband.
That is correct, my lady.
And that would be not because it was a screaming of a woman that was being threatened, but one that was fearful because of the concern for the safety of her husband. If I could sum it up.
My lady, I wouldn't, those were not my thoughts exactly, that it was for the safety of her husband. Our interpretation was that, my interpretation at that point was that these people were being attacked in their house.
Yes.
So both.
Yes, I can take you to parts in your evidence, I can deal with that, or I can ask you again. Your explanation and that of your wife and the discussion between you was this, that you thought that they had shot the husband.
That is correct, my lady.
Yes. If, of course, at that time you thought that the woman was about to be shot, and not a husband, that would have been the discussion. It would have been this. We didn't think it was a husband that was going to be shot, but hang on, I can hear it is this woman that's in danger. She is about to be shot. That was not your discussion.
That is correct, and the reason is that we heard the screams before, during, and
Yes.
that last scream. We didn't hear the man again, and therefore we assumed something had happened to him.
Yes. You didn't associate that the woman would be shot and still during the shots would scream. It would rather be the man was shot.
That was our assumption, correct, ma'am.
One thing, of course, that you will say is that you're absolutely certain, I assume, that what you heard were gunshot wounds.
Gunshots.
Yes.
I'm convinced that I heard gunshots,
Absolutely
my
certain.
lady.
And you would have known about the debate about the cricket bat hitting a Meranti door. Not so.
I'm not certain what the debate Advocate Roo is referring to.
You don't know about the bat, a cricket bat banging a door?
I am aware of the fact that the door was broken down with a cricket bat, my lady.
Who told you that?
I think I read it somewhere, my lady, following the proceedings in the bail hearing.
But you can say, as you sit there, those noises, I assume, did not come from someone taking a cricket bat and hitting a hard door, a Meranti door. Or don't you know?
My lady, I'm certain that I heard gunshots. I'm familiar with the sound of gunshots.
Yes. I'm going to show you something. Because I knew you would say this, somehow. I'm going to show you something. And I want you to listen very, very carefully. You have the exact time, you and your wife, of the shooting and the exact duration of the call, not so. 3:16, and the duration of the call was 58 seconds.
That is correct, my lady.
Yes.
We got that from my cell phone
Yes,
record.
I accept that. Let us look at your version and the steps. So we know after the call, you threw the telephone down and you ran back to the balcony.
That is correct, my lady.
Would have been very quick.
Yes, it's approximately 10 meters, my
Yes.
lady.
We know now we at 3:17 because the call was 3:16, 58 seconds to 3:17. We now in 3:17 when you hear the shots, screaming the shots.
I accept that.
Let me share with you something. I want to share a time with you. You can make a note of it. 3:19 and 30 seconds. 1.5 minutes, approximately, later. The accused, Mr. Pistorius, called Mr. Stander for help. And on his version, we know one thing. He called Mr. Stander shortly. Events including, but shortly, after breaking down the door, the bathroom, the toilet door. Do you take note of what
I accept
say?
that. I accept that.
So let's work back. Let's take the 1.5 minute back, or 2 minutes, doesn't matter, to your 3:17. There can only one thing that had happened, only one thing that you heard, because it coincides precisely with your time. That's why it was so good of you to give us the exact time. That was the time when he broke down the door.
Milady, I'm convinced the sounds that I heard were gunshots.
Yes.
And that is my testimony.
I understand that. Of course we can say He first broke down the door with the bat, then took insulation tape, put the panels back and shoot holes through it, which we know it's nonsense. You agree? That cannot be.
It doesn't sound
Yes. So
feasible.
let's
But I
develop.
object, is that a question for this witness? That could have been. Do you agree? That's not a question for the witness. The witness should be questioned. For Mr. Root to say that this is possible, that somebody would take isolation tape, is creating an atmosphere. It's not a question for this witness. I object to that kind of question.
Yes, Mr. Roux.
My lady, I'm putting a proposition and I'm showing to the witness why it could not be the other one. That is all I'm doing, to show him why it could only be the bat. There could only be one other possibility, and that was, of course, when the door was broken down before, but then you had to reassemble the door. And I said, it's not a possibility. I said, that's not an option after that. I said, it cannot be. Help the witness.
Yes, Mr. Nell.
I accept it.
I'll allow the question.
Thank you, my lady.
Yes.
Do you understand that, Mr.? So I was not trying to be funny about it. I'm trying to demonstrate the point exact. That cannot be. And that's the point I'm making at you. That it could only be, we have the times, it could only be, it exactly coincides with that minute, the breaking down of the door.
Milady, can I ask the reference to the times, were they taken from my statement or were they taken from a central time server, which I would assume the cell phone provider would have available?
Mr. Johnson, I'm curious about it because you explained to us, and we know your cell phone data, we know that's a central data, we know you put it in your statement, you know you would not lie to the policeman and say it was 316 and the duration is 58. You said to us that you checked it. That's why I'm saying to you, and we received, let me help you, we received from the police the time calls made by the accused,
Okay.
exact time calls.
Thank you.
You understand it? That's what I'm saying to you. And I was at pains to try and demonstrate it yesterday. It's not always about credibility, Mr. Johnson. It is where people sometimes genuinely believe that something had happened. And then when they believe it, that is what they would tell people because they genuinely believe it. It's a different question if it's correct. You understand what I'm saying to you?
I understand what
So
you're saying.
let us take the facts here. You hear that sound. You hear a woman screaming. And I can understand that you believe it was a woman. I'll come back to it. I can understand it. We just had to listen to another witness's evidence to get the better understanding. It's not too important. I understand you believing, credibility-wise, that it was a woman screaming. I understand you believing that the noises that you heard were gunshot voices. I understand that. But you have to factor in the following. One, that once you know, subsequently, you get that confirmation for your belief that the woman was shot by Mr. Pistorius. It cements, that knowledge cements your belief to the extent that it becomes absolute concrete in your mind. Do you understand what I put to you? I'm not talking about lying or not lying. It cements your belief. It's concrete. Now you genuinely believe it. But there are two problems to your belief. And I'm trying in all fairness, it's a man's life at stake, in all fairness to say, let's look at other possibilities. One thing that does not fit in with your version, in all fairness, is a man screaming for help. Not so.
Milady, I'm absolutely convinced that I heard a lady and a man screaming.
My question was different, Mr. Johnson.
Milady, can Advocate Roux please repeat his question?
One thing that does not fit in was the man screaming for help. That's strange, to say the least.
Can Advocate Roux perhaps clarify why he thinks it's strange?
Did you not think it was strange when a man, you know now that the man shot his girlfriend, him screaming, help. It doesn't fit in.
Milady, that is correct, and that's why
Yeah.
initially I was surprised when I learned
Yes.
what had happened.
But now we know second factor. And I'm going to a third one, Mr. Johnson. The second factor is that we can work out the time to the minute when the door was broken down. And that's the time when you were standing on the balcony. We have your time and we have the time of the call to Mr. Stander. It's not difficult to work out. You understand what I say to you?
I understand.
Yes. Then there's a third factor. There is a third factor. You didn't go to bed immediately. I could see that you say that you were anxious, you battled to sleep and so on. You agree?
That is correct. I was in the bedroom.
One thing you did not hear. You did not hear the bashing of a door after the shots.
Milady, that is correct. I did not hear
Yes.
those noises.
Of course, if you were still asleep and there were then gunshots fired and then a woman screaming, you would not have heard the gunshots. Not so.
Sorry, I lost concentration.
If you
Can
were
I-
asleep and you only woke up, if we assume that there were gunshots, then screaming after that. You woke up by the screaming, you would not have heard the gunshots.
I don't know
Yes.
how to respond to that question.
We know one thing. Your wife, on your evidence, your wife did not wake up because of screaming. She woke up because of you jumping out of the bed. On your evidence.
That is correct.
Yes. I want to ask you something else, Mr. Johnson. You went to witnesses